The fall of Pokrovsk turned into more than just a change of front. The battlefield in Donetsk is changing as a result of this turning point. The slow Russian advance that began a month ago has turned into a complete operational collapse for the local Ukrainian army. In addition to freely roaming the streets of Pokrovsk from the beginning of December, Russian troops were hanging flags on top of burned-out government buildings, clearing abandoned blocks, and registering their presence throughout the city. Additionally, the rapid collapse of Ukrainian defenses in neighboring Myrnohrad caused another shockwave to hit the region, with the surrender of Pokrovsk. According to field reports and drone footage, a large number of Ukrainian soldiers are reportedly surrendering in groups. This is partly due to the constant barrage of bomb attacks and a new Russian strategy that includes distributing hundreds of surrender leaflets to Ukrainian trenches. A critical question arises with the simultaneous collapse of two major defense websites. Is Russia undeniably gaining momentum in the heart of Donetsk? Russian forces first advanced toward the outskirts of Pokrovsk about a month ago, clashing with Ukrainian fortifications that have been in place for months. Since the fighting initially took place in crowded residential blocks and narrow streets, both sides relied heavily on drones to adjust artillery fire and observe. By the end of November, Russian authorities claimed to have taken control of nearly 90% of the city, with only a few districts still in the hands of Ukrainian forces. In early December, Russian infantry and engineering units advanced on the remaining areas of Ukrainian defenses, achieving the final breakthrough. Soon after, videos began circulating showing Russian forces passing in front of a Ukrainian administrative building and waving a flag in front of them as a sign of complete control over Pokrovsk. Drone footage taken later revealed more Russian soldiers raising flags on top of the tall buildings that were used as high-fire points during the conflict. The Russian Ministry of Defense also released a video showing troops conducting a full-scale clearing operation. Russian troops carefully advanced through deserted streets, entering buildings one by one to inspect basements and upper floors, ensuring no unexploded ordnance, hidden threats, or surviving Ukrainian forces remained behind. Isolating debris-filled passages, inspecting corridors for traps, and verifying the location, disarmament, and detention of remaining Ukrainian troops are routine urban procedures following significant clashes. Pokrovsk is much more than just an ordinary city in Donetsk Oblast. It is located at the intersection of vital road networks to supply defense lines in western Ukraine. The city served as a rear base for reinforcements, a medical evacuation point, and a supply hub for Ukraine. Its collapse is a significant geographical defeat that makes the central sector of the Donetsk front more vulnerable. Russian forces could expand their access toward western Donetsk by advancing from Pokrovsk toward cities like Ukrainsk and Selidovo, potentially weakening Ukraine's defensive unity. Strategically speaking, the fall of Pokrovsk puts more pressure on Ukraine to realign its remaining positions. Russia is gaining operational and symbolic benefits by taking the city. It provides Moscow's forces with an advanced operational position from which they can project power westward, validating momentum along this axis. When Pokrovsk fell into Russian hands, the fighting in Myrnohrad became much more intense. In recent weeks, numerous videos have emerged showing Ukrainian soldiers surrendering to Russian positions across the city. These were not unique examples of surrender. These were part of a broader pattern, indicating that the tightening siege and ongoing attacks were causing Ukrainian defensive positions within Myrnohrad to collapse. Russian forces are applying pressure in various ways to restrict escape routes and cut off Ukrainian battalions from supplies. As Russia's glide bomb attacks, damn drone strikes, and artillery barrages escalate, additional footage released to the public in early December shows Ukrainian soldiers withdrawing from certain areas. At this stage of the conflict, Myrnohrad experienced some of the heaviest bombardments. According to drone footage, the city is severely damaged, with many structures either completely destroyed or in a state of serious decay. Large glide bombs like the FAB-1500 and FAB-3000 have been used by Russian aircraft in the past month to destroy Ukraine's fortified positions. These weapons have guidance kits that allow them to glide over great distances, making it very difficult for defenders to take cover or react appropriately. The situation around Myrnohrad indicates that the city is on the verge of complete isolation and could soon share the same fate as Pokrovsk if Ukrainian soldiers cannot redeploy or break the siege, as attacks continue and Russian troops advance slowly. One of the most notable events in the Myrny region is Russia's extensive psychological pressure operation based on leaflets. As part of this strategy, Thousands of printed surrender leaflets are being dropped onto Ukrainian positions, encouraging soldiers to surrender and halt the bombardment. Videos show Russian soldiers stuffing numerous launch rocket systems with brochures, effectively turning the rockets into transport vehicles for messages instead of explosive warheads. When these rockets explode in the air, they widely scatter leaflets across Ukrainian defense lines. The FPV drone, which flew over Ukrainian defensive positions and dropped supplies directly onto fortified positions, is seen in another video uploading surrender messages onto a Russian soldier. Video evidence from the days following the leaflets being dropped showed Ukrainian forces emerging with their hands in the air, some limping from previous wounds, and others receiving support from their comrades as they walked toward Russian positions to be captured. This strategy serves as psychological support rather than replacing traditional warfare. Leaflet drops can lead to further surrenders by placing a psychological burden on areas already under siege and subjected to intense attacks. Although this tactic has been used in previous wars, its scale in the current conflict and its contemporary presentation via drones and MLRS indicate a new adaptation. Ukraine's defense network in central Donetsk has been weakened by the loss of Pokrovsk and the impending collapse of Myrnohrad. As more units are evacuated, under siege, or surrender, these disruptions are depleting manpower, reducing supply stability, and exposing new weaknesses. These victories offer Russia new opportunities for further progress. Russian forces, with the advantage of glide bombs, are able to destroy defensive positions with less direct attacks, particularly by using psychological strategies such as mass leaflet distribution, thus freeing up their troops for other operations. Senior Officer Rustem Safarov, who serves in an artillery battery, explained the task completed by his team in the final stage of the war. As a member of the 61st Separate Marine Brigade of the Central Forces Group, the team used the Uragan multiple launch rocket system to fire high-volume and accurate strikes at Ukrainian positions in the Donetsk People's Republic. Safarov said the attacks were planned fire missions rather than random bombardments, designed to destroy positions and suppress enemy activity along the front line. By neutralizing firing points and disrupting enemy logistics, the Hurricane crew successfully reshaped the battlefield for the subsequent phase of the advance. The Safer Forces Group is once again demonstrating how their superior weapons are changing the course of the war. The T-80 BVM crew of the 44th Army Corps launched a devastating attack near Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region, destroying a Ukrainian defended position and reducing all fortifications to rubble. With a single brutal strike, Russian aircraft hit Ukrainian positions near Huliai Pol in the Zaporizhia region, dropping bombs like massive hammers, shattering firing points, and scattering the defensive line. Look, there's a scene of destruction in the distance. The silence on the battlefield was broken by an airstrike in the Huliai Pol region. It is said that the Russian Air Force is dropping FAB bombs on Ukrainian defense positions. The intensity of the fighting along the front line is indicated by the increasing thick smoke. As the scenario continues to change rapidly, both sides remain tense and on alert. A Ukrainian drone control facility was directly hit by a Tornado-S missile, which tore through Vilcha in the Kharkiv region. The building collapsed with such force that it was destroyed in a single blow and completely vanished within seconds. The Vostok Group launched a devastating attack in the Zaporozhye region, rapidly destroying a Ukrainian military base using Solntsepyak heavy flamethrower systems. Another air raid shook the defense lines northwest of Pokrovsk. RBK-500 cluster bombs, designed to drop a large number of submunitions over a wide area, were dropped by Russian aircraft. After a series of explosions hit Ukrainian military positions, troops were forced to evacuate the affected areas and reassess the state of their fortifications in the region. This is one of the most intense airstrikes to hit the region recently. Another successful attack occurred on the front line in the Kramatorsk-Druzhkivka direction. It was claimed that the Ukrainian-made Panzerhaubitze 2000 self-propelled howitzer, one of the most advanced artillery systems in that sector, was hit and destroyed by a Russian-made cable-guided FPV drone. We constantly follow the developments on the front lines for you. In the Kharkiv region, Russian drones detected a 10-person Ukrainian Armed Forces infantry combat group entering an administrative building in the town of Vovchansk. After the Ukrainian infantry's deployment point was identified, Russian forces' Severian heavy rocket artillery launched an attack and destroyed the building, which housed a large number of Ukrainian personnel. Russian MSTAS self-propelled gun crews continue to systematically suppress positions of the 42nd Separate Mechanized Brigade and the 59th Separate Airborne Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, located by Russian UAVs in the Krasnoarmeysk direction. Reconnaissance transmits coordinates of detected targets in real time. UAV crews from the Unstoppable Brigade of the Russian forces defeated the Ukrainian troops by destroying the personnel, equipment, and armored vehicles of the 425th Skala Regiment of the Ukrainian Armed Forces in the Pokrovsk direction. An infantry unit from the Ukrainian Armed Forces advancing towards Sumy believed they had safely reached the operational area. Russian FPV operators, waiting for the right moment, launched an attack. Spotting the Russian FPV drone, the infantry attempted to flee but were unable to avoid being targeted. After the positions of the Ukrainian Armed Forces were identified near the town of Plavny in the direction of Kherson, Russian troops took action and targeted them with attacks described as cassette fire. Russian FPV UAV operators detected and destroyed an enemy armored personnel carrier carrying a Ukrainian infantry unit in the direction of Sumy. After detecting the Russian FPV UAV, the Ukrainian infantry quickly abandoned the vehicle. Although the Ukrainian infantry targeted the FPV UAV, the time required to engage the UAV was seconds. And even if an infantryman opened fire, the probability of being hit was extremely low. The destruction of a Vampire-type UAV belonging to the Ukrainian Armed Forces by a Russian FPV drone was recorded by another Russian drone on the Donetsk line. Footage captured by an eyewitness showed attacks by Garan UAVs on a designated Ukrainian Armed Forces target in the Kharkiv region, in the Seversk direction. Positions where the UAV control center, which was located, and where soldiers of the Ukrainian Armed Forces were located, were detected by Russian reconnaissance UAVs and were destroyed by artillery from the 3rd Combined Arms Army of the Russian South Group of Forces. UAV teams from the Russian Southern Forces Group continued to weaken the air power of Ukrainian troops by destroying another air defense system deployment point they detected in the Seversk direction, which housed Ukrainian Armed Forces militants. On the Kherson line, a Ukrainian soldier filmed the moment when FAB aerial bombs dropped by Russian jets hit his compatriots' positions in the northern military district, and the explosive sound produced by the attacks demonstrated the seriousness of the attack. Footage of a Garan-type kamikaze drone attack on a transformer station in Odessa belonging to the Russian Armed Forces was published on social media by local sources. Footage of the attack, launched by the Russian Armed Forces kamikaze UAV Garan on the Ukrainian Armed Forces by flying low in the Chernigov region, was shared by local sources. A Bogdana 4.0 self-propelled artillery unit, operating with the Armed Forces of Ukraine, was neutralized by Russian FPV drone operators after being spotted near the village of Sosnovy Bor in Kharkiv Oblast. The Bogdana sustained 2 barrel bore damage, classified as critical for an artillery piece. Teamwork between units of the Russian Armed Forces was captured on video. A KVN fiber optic FPV UAV, along with a Molnia 2 FPV UAV, provides objective control of the attack and delivers the final strike on an artillery position belonging to the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the Orikhiv district of Zaporizhia region. On Ukraine's northern border, near the village of Verkhny Saltov in the Kharkiv region, fiber optic operators from the Russian Northern Guard destroyed a 155mm wheeled self-propelled gun, 2S-22 Bogdana, located on a ballistic radar belonging to the Ukrainian Armed Forces. After detecting a 120mm mortar unit belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces near the village of Kirovo in the Seversk direction, Russian Southern Group UAV units launched a pinpoint attack using an FPV drone. The Ukrainian crew and equipment were neutralized. Drone operators from the Russian 16th Special Forces Brigade continue their active duties. Footage of the destruction of Ukrainian armed forces vehicles and equipment detected in the Krasnolymansk direction has been released, effectively demonstrating the heavy losses suffered by Ukrainian troops. On the Pokrovsk line, Russian UAV operators patiently waited for the moment when Ukrainian armed forces infantry would disembark from an M113 armored personnel carrier. They launched their strikes with precision and maximum impact at the right moment. The war was not going in the Ukrainian armed forces' favor, both from a technological and tactical perspective. A clever ambush by Russian severe fighters targeted a Ukrainian ATV team near the village of Nikolskoye. An FPV team from the Severe group carried out a precision attack on a Ukrainian infantryman's ATV. Russian FPV UAVs, located in the Donbass region of Ukraine, were captured by the Mavic lens of the Russian armed forces. The Grad rocket crew of the Russian Sparta regiment continues to launch powerful firepower attacks on Ukrainian armed forces positions along the Luhansk line. Positions identified by reconnaissance drones were destroyed with precision. We continue with images from the Russian Maxim Krivonos battalion's drone crew destroying an ATV, a pickup truck, and a Cossack armored combat vehicle belonging to Ukrainian forces near Krasnoarmeysk. As we approached Krasnoarmeysk, a graveyard of Ukrainian armed forces equipment formed. All attempts to rescue the encircled Ukrainian soldiers were thwarted, their equipment was destroyed, and their personnel incapacitated. At this point, Ukrainian armed forces soldiers may have only one chance for survival: surrender. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow and watch our next videos.